Hello from your favorite Grasslands PR team. This week we're back with another reason why these overlooked and underappreciated ecosystems are objectively the best biome. I'm Nicole.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Alan. And, today we're doing something a little bit different because it is, May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And I don't know how your May is going. It has been a dodgy mental health month for me.
That's relatable.
Yeah. But that's why we decided to come at you today with something from the more positive side of things, right? We're coming from a place of good vibes today because I think when this is a conservation podcast, and way too often in the conservation space do we fall into the trap of impending doom and hopelessness.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so easy to fall into that.
Yep.
I think we specifically edit ourselves sometimes to not be gloom and doom too much.
Yes.
Today we're giving you a nice hearty bowl of comfort food in the source of good news.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start us off. Everybody prepared good news today to share with everybody else. I decided to go with quantity over quality because,
Okay.
Instead of doing deep dives, I just wanted to get a little sampling of all of the good things that are happening.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I should check my email more often because I do actually have Google alerts set up for all kinds of different grasslands topics. And so I was like, let's just see what's happened in May so far. And it turns out a lot of good things have happened just in May so far. And so
nice.
I was like, that's a good thing to highlight. All these little obscure stories and maybe some not so obscure stories that are kind of huge, actually. And it's May 19th as we're recording this?
Yes.
So this isn't even an entire month's worth of good news. But I have some news for you. Are you ready?
Outstanding. I'm very ready.
Okay. My first section is funding and legislation type stuff, because that's been pretty good, it turns out. I didn't even know this, so, shame on me for not checking my email. But on May 1st, the Biden-Harris administration announced $36 million to improve water quality, roads, stuff like that on national forests and grasslands nationwide. That's through the USDA Forest Service, through their Legacy Roads and Trails program. And they've supported 98 projects to improve ecological connectivity and watershed health. One example of a project that received some of that money is the Dakota Prairie Grasslands. And they got almost $500,000 to improve access to their grasslands. So, that's not insignificant, that amount of funding going to our national forests and grasslands.
Nice,
very
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Mm-hmm. It's nice, especially if they're focusing on the access piece of it and building trails and things like that. And because people don't always have an opportunity to go visit grasslands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big theme, I think, so far for this month. And, one of their big pieces of this legislation, too, was watershed health and water quality. The idea being that, a lot of our national forests and grasslands have water passing through them and are responsible for a lot of our water quality, too. And so things we can do to improve that on the lands we can do that on are beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely.
Woo.
So more USDA news. USDA and the Interior announced on May 11th a proposed $2.8 billion with a B in funding for the 2024 year. This is authorized by the Great American Outdoors Act, and it is also going to improve access to management and recreation opportunities on national forests and grasslands across the entire nation. So that's pretty neat. And this month, there's also been a proposed CRP Reform Act of 2023, the goal of which is to shift focus. So I think we're familiar with CRP. Does anybody want to give the meat and potatoes version for the audience if they don't know what CRP is?
It is the Conservation Reserve Program, and that is basically something that encourages landowners to maintain tracts of or margins or portions of their land holdings in a more natural state and a state more reflective of the natural habitat.
Yeah.
And it's a direct financial benefit to them for maintaining habitat, basically.
Yeah. And this Reform Act that's been proposed, the goal of it is to shift the focus from like major tracts of land that are like high productivity farmland to marginal farmland, and like smaller and beginning farmers, prioritizing basically longer term agreements and grasslands specifically, for more marginal habitat. So, quote, their goal is to generate more durable wildlife and environmental benefits while reducing competition for productive farmland between USDA and farmers. Especially new and beginning farmers. And it's trying to make it easier to enroll, easier to re-enroll. It's extending contract lengths to 30 years and incentivizing basically continuous enrollment of specifically grasslands categories into CRP.
Nice. And I think when I saw that article, they're also just increasing like the payments as well, right?
Yeah,
like the financial benefit of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's like a whole list of all the things that it's like, mechanically doing to improve all of this stuff. But yeah, they're just trying to make it easier to preserve lands.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah. So if you know any farmers who aren't doing CRP, this is like a good time for them to jump in on that.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just one more little tiny funding thing is that the Nature Conservancy announced 9 different grasslands specific research projects that they are going to be funding through their small grants awards program this year. And they just announced that like last week. So, yeah, there's all kinds of good little research projects. I'm not going to talk about all of them because I have more stuff to talk about. So, yeah. Good job, conservation efforts.
Woo!
Okay, so let me also tell you some of the other good things that are happening for grasslands across the world. Okay, number 1, Arizona Game and Fish just got $800,000. They're going to be specifically restoring pronghorn and mule deer migration routes in Arizona because that's a huge migration path. Yeah. It's really important to preserve that. And it's, like most grasslands, being completely overtaken by trees. So they're going to be like removing woody invasive species and reducing erosion and facilitating more prescribed fires and stuff to preserve 4,000 acres of pronghorn migration areas and grasslands.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. I always wonder, like how far does $800,000 go? I have like no like sense of scale for these things. So it's nice that we have like, that's going to go towards 4,000 acres, you said?
4,000 acres of migration areas. Mm-hmm. And I guess this is part of a federal program to improve migration corridors across like 11 different Western states that are having habitat fragmentation issues. So it's an effort that includes like 11 different states that have access to this funding to try and deal with that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of organizations that like, we're talking about like millions, billions or whatever, tens of thousands of dollars even. Like, I feel like there's a lot of organizations that can make that money go a really long way.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's very exciting.
Yeah. And, migration paths on land are something that don't get talked about as often. Like we always think about bird migration. They can just fly wherever they want to go. But for like large herds of ungulates using grasslands as corridors, it's difficult, especially when habitats are getting so fragmented for them to even survive. Mm-hmm. So so exciting. South Dakota State University Extension is announcing a huge project to kill back invasive trees and restore grasslands. I really liked this interview because the rangeland and fire ecology professor from University of Nebraska-Lincoln that was talking about this just had so many like really great things to say about their efforts that they're doing there to stop woody encroachment in South Dakota. He said, quote, "You will lose your horizons. Unless this group is different, you have a chance to do what the rest of the Great Plains can't." Basically in restoring the horizons and the landscape of the Great Plains in South Dakota. And he pointed out that grasslands are underprotected and highly converted. And so it's so important to protect grasslands from crop conversion and woody encroachment. Those are the two main things. And so South Dakota is pushing a huge effort to fight back against that. He says, quote, "We protect forests for the sake of forests. We've viewed grasslands since settlement as something that has no value and needs to be improved." And he's fighting back against that mindset in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get him.
That made me happy. Moving on. In Wales, the Denbigshire, I can't pronounce Wales things. Denbigshire, I think is, that's probably not even a very difficult thing to pronounce. I'm just making it difficult. Their county council has a wildflower meadows project that they have been working on, which aims to protect the county's biodiversity by allowing wildflowers and insects to thrive. So basically their county has a bunch of sites that are managed by their biodiversity team, and they leave huge stretches of meadows completely uncut from March through August, except for maybe like small borders that are mown to like contain stuff and make people happy. They currently have this season 129 meadows. They're supporting biodiversity improvements across this county, and that just made me smile.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's like no mow May on steroids.
Yeah, like the entire summer. And these are like not, huge stretches of land.
Yeah.
It's highway verges, footpath edges, cycleways, and what they call amenity grasslands. But like by doing this across the entire county, they have 129 little meadows, and that like goes a long way towards providing additional habitat. So
Yeah.
what a good little role model.
No.
Thanks, Wales. Also in Wales, there's a South Wales group working to save the endangered Monaro grassland earless dragon.
The earless dragon?
The earless dragon.
Okay.
It's a little lizard, and it lives in burrows made by wolf spiders.
Oh, how small is this lizard?
Wow.
It's very tiny, and it's very cute. And it literally only lives on the basalt plains in this really specific part of Wales. And there's like a group in Wales that's over the last 5 years. They reported on it in May, so that's why I found it. But they've been building and installing 400 artificial burrows across the grasslands where this little earless dragon lives.
Oh my gosh.
In order to conserve its habitat and try to give it a good chance at life. And I think that's really cute, but also so sad that they have to make artificial wolf spider burrows out of PVC.
Yeah, I was going to say,
with
just
PVC,
little
okay.
PVC
Yeah, little
pipes.
PVC
It'd be
pipes.
really easy.
Pop them in the
They're so
ground.
tiny.
It's like you just like stick your finger in the dirt and
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. No, they're slightly more durable. But
Nice.
it's also like, I mean, honestly, it's just the scale of it that makes it difficult. That's not a hard thing to do, to make like a bunch of little tiny PVC tubes the size of wolf spider burrows for tiny lizards to live in.
Yeah.
But like people needed to do it, and they're doing it. So good job, guys.
That's really
That's
nice.
It
amazing.
makes me happy.
Earless dragon.
Little tiny buddies. Another story from Vietnam. They have a site that they've been trying to preserve since the 1990s. And last month, a team from IUCN and INSEE visited to like check on the progress of conservation of that site and give more recommendations. And so this is like a 60,000 hectare area of seasonally flooded grassland in Phu Mai. And it is one of the Mekong Delta's last natural grasslands. And so this region has been identified as an area that needs conservation. It's like one of the last natural grasslands in this delta. And since the 1990s, they've been pouring so much into this site trying to preserve this like really unique ecosystem. Last year alone, they spent 500,000 USD on the site. And also that involved like compensating farmers nearby because one of their main efforts is to de-intensify rice production on that delta. And like their big long-term goal is to conserve a large area of natural and semi-natural grassland with like buffer areas around it, which basically can still be human dominated, but preserve all of the biodiversity of that region. This is a type of habitat that supports this iconic crane, the Ceres crane. And so it's a really important site and one of the last grasslands of this area. And the team that went out and saw it were like, oh my God, this is going great. Everything's going wonderfully. Great job, everybody. This has been a roaring success. We're going to keep going. And that is just great news.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. What good feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A few more stories here just to, hammer in the good vibes. So I found an article saying that the UN actually announced that 2026 is going to be the UN International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, which means that the United Nations and the 300 groups that have backed this move is making it a priority for an entire year to internationally work on grasslands-dominated rangelands and pastoralist communities, which is freaking huge. If you're not aware, I did not know this, pastoralists are considered nomadic people who raise livestock in grassland environments. Okay. So that's the difference between like rangeland and pastoralist lands. But yeah, so that's neat.
Yeah.
Coming soon to 2026 near you. Great job, UN. And also the World Wildlife Fund published a brief this month detailing policy actions they recommend for the U.S. government to take specifically to conserve America's grassland prairie habitats. And I think that this is like good stuff to see and to be reminded of, because there are so many huge groups that are like, hey, actually grasslands are super important. And we keep seeing that more and more, that like on an international scale, grassland awareness is skyrocketing. And so it's cool seeing big guys fighting for grasslands out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. People are coming around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And finally, I have some good Cerrado news from Brazil's Cerrado. Number one, research was published this month showing that there's still time to save it.
Hey.
So that's good. The research could have shown other results. Yeah. But instead, we are running out of time, but there's still time. We can still save the Cerrado. Great news. Also, Cargill is getting sued again for destroying the Cerrado, so that's pretty exciting.
Nice.
They've faced legal complaints before, but every time there's a new one, you think, well, maybe something will happen. This legal complaint against this agricultural giant is over its failure to, number one, adequately deal with its contribution to soy-driven deforestation in the Cerrado, the Amazon rainforest, and the Atlantic forest in Brazil, but also all of its human rights violations in the process of doing all of the things that they're doing for soy production in Brazil. So that's neat. Keep punching the big guys, I guess, until something happens. Because, it's one of those, as again, people who are stuck in doom and gloom a lot of the challenges that we are facing is that as individual people, it's difficult to make a change when there's giants who are just deforesting savannas and converting grasslands to cropland, etc. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to punch the big guys sometimes to make some change happen. And it's good to see people are trying to do that. Yeah.
Do you know how much they're getting sued for?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can click the link. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where they filed a legal complaint, and a lot of legal complaints have been filed before, and Cargill has ignored some of them and gotten away with it somehow because judges refused to see the case, or they settled it like outside of court and nobody ever saw what happened as the result of it. So I think a lot of the litigation hasn't really like gone anywhere that we can visibly see, unfortunately. It's the beginning stage. I don't really know how law works. I don't want to embarrass myself too much in this podcast because my sister is a lawyer, but
No, it's fine.
Yeah, cool, great.
Yeah.
And that's all the good news I have for you today. A lot of stuff has happened in May, and that's pretty exciting.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love it.
Very nice, Rachel. That was some intense good news.
Yes. Thank you.
I think we should all set ourselves Google alerts for when good things happen. so that we find out about them if we remember to check our email. Yeah.
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 Highly recommend it. You might have to specify like no stock notifications or gold notifications for the word step, etc. But
Okay, good to know.
there's a sports team out there with a name that involves grasslands, and it's like I don't want to see their scores.
Wait, is it the sod poodles?
I should set an alert for sod poodles specifically.
I'm their biggest fan. Never even seen them play, but
Fantastic.
Oh gosh. Now it's Alan's turn to tell us some good news.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I have some good news. I had good news from the world of birds. I don't know how plugged in you are to the world of birds, dear listener, but there are good bird things that happen from time to time. Yeah.
it's true.
And one grassland-specific bird thing that happened has to do with the blue-throated macaw.
Oh.
There they are on our lovely banner. Thank you, Rachel. And
sometimes. So.
yeah,
Yes.
if you look at the podcast icon right now, you can see one in all of its glory.
It's true.
But the blue-throated macaw, native to Bolivia, endemic to Bolivia, like into a very like small region of it at this point, like what they call the Beni Savanna, and it is critically endangered. Okay, at one point there was estimated to be around only 50 or so, 50 to 100 birds left in the wild. But the good news is that those numbers are increasing. They're increasing in the wild, and that has a lot to do with specific conservation efforts. There was a report released a couple months ago by the organization that's been largely responsible for spearheading those efforts. Their name is Asociación Armonia. And they have done a lot to help these birds. That includes everything from the construction of hundreds of nest boxes, to also working with working in cooperation with the indigenous people of the area, the Moxeño, who have traditionally hunted macaw and used them for a variety of headdresses and other like important things that are of cultural significance. They've worked closely with them to sort of like transition from utilizing the macaw to utilizing synthetic materials, and they've really made a lot of differences. I think one of the interesting things about this story that really catches my attention, though, is like the way that this particular area is functioning, because a lot of this is happening on what's called the Barba Azul Nature Reserve in Bolivia, and that is named for the bird itself. The Barba Azul, meaning bluebeard in Spanish, that's the name for the macaw. They are operating this area in a really interesting way. So they have 11,000 hectares, which is bigger than an acre. It's 10,000 square meters.
I can never remember.
I don't know either.
I look it up every time.
10,000 square meters to a hectare. This is like a metric thing, and it's so much easier to do that, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that this is just a random fact, but like the original measurement of an acre was how much 2 cattle could plow in one day?
No.
Doesn't seem like that's not a standard measurement. You know what I mean?
That's
Okay.
not a standard measurement.
Anyway, moving on. Okay, so it's 11,000 hectares, and half of that is dedicated to being a nature reserve, right? So where they're letting native vegetation come back from all of the years of cattle grazing and other degradation that this area has experienced. Which is good, right? That's very, very good. But the other half, I think, is what's more interesting. They're operating that as a ranch. Okay. So they are actually raising cattle in the Barba Azul. The people feel cattle are compatible with that ecosystem if it's done right. So, filling in the ecological role of like, megafauna and that sort of thing that have become extinct, and they're really using it as like a test case to demonstrate that you can raise cattle sustainably and profitably in an area that is dedicated to conservation without harming the biodiversity, because this is like a huge hotspot. This particular area is a big hotspot. It's not just the macaws that are there, but it's also habitat for 340 bird species, including the Orinoco goose. Sorry, the streamer-tailed tyrant. It's a great name.
It's a great name.
I love tyrant birds, flycatchers, and all that. And the greater rhea.
Nice.
Okay. They also have like giant anteaters and all this other stuff like that. So it's very fun. Yeah. It's a very cool, very, very biodiverse, little spot of grassland. So they're operating it in a way where they are trying to demonstrate that there is a way to functionally, use the land without completely converting it from a grassland, right? We've talked a little bit before on the podcast about like sustainable ranching practices and like how you can manage that in a way that more closely replicates the actual role that large herbivores play in a grassland, as opposed to just like grinding it down to bare bones nothing. So it's a very cool thing that they're doing there. There's now estimated to be between 400 and 500 birds now.
Nice.
Lots of fledglings leaving the nest every year. They are nesting in not only the nest boxes, but they're also finding habitats in these little like little forested islands within the savanna itself, where they have where these macaws can find things like dead palm trees to nest in, and that's really great. That's a very positive thing. When you get these communities together and you empower people and you mobilize them, you can actually make a difference, right? Their focus was on a single species here, the blue-throated macaw, but that is going to pay dividends for all of the wildlife that calls this particular savanna home. And I think it's a good example of the way that things could be done in terms of humans coexisting with a grassland instead of purely just utilizing a grassland, right?
Yeah.
Treating that as not a resource, but as a habitat for people as well. So yeah, I just think that's really nice. Yeah.
That makes me happy to hear.
Yes.
Another thing from the bird world.
Birds.
Had to do with the State of the Birds report released by the American Bird Conservancy and the Audubon Society for 2022. So that came out at the end of last year, beginning of this year. There are obviously, with avian wildlife in general, there are some pretty worrying trends, as you would imagine, but there is a positive note to be taken from this, and that is that there is an actual upward trend in populations of water birds in the United States. That is not the general trend for most bird populations. What is the message that we can take from that is that, okay, there's obviously been a huge concerted effort towards protecting waterfowl.
Yeah.
If we think about everything that's happened from wetland conservation, lots of wetland specific legislation, organizations like the Ramsar Convention, programs like the duck stamp and the junior duck stamp, right, to promote education, but also to provide funding, which I think the net benefit of like the duck stamp program has ended up protecting hundreds of thousands of acres of wetlands. Like it's, been, they use some of that money to actually purchase and rehabilitate wetlands. Yeah. That's a big portion of it. So, and then of course you've also got private organizations like Ducks Unlimited and things like that. You've got hunters, you've got landowners, you've got conservationists, all kind of working together on these initiatives. And it just demonstrates like, okay, when you get entire communities of people together and you focus them, on the importance of certain things, right? Like wetlands, like ducks. Okay. That really does end up making a difference. Like people together the combined effort of that, and then when you add to that the weight of policy and enforcement and funding from a government, all that together really does end up making a difference. It feels like it, doesn't sometimes, right? Sometimes we feel like, okay, well, governments could be more effective, or we could be doing more, or whatever. But the truth of it is, like, when you actually get people all together and focus them on something, we do have the agency, the efficacy to impact conservation goals. So yeah, I think, if that is, I think the lesson to take from that is if that sort of thing can be done for wetlands and can be done for waterfowl, there's absolutely no reason that it couldn't be done for grasslands as well. And so I think, which is a very encouraging thing, that we're seeing this trend of turning people's focus towards grasslands as it was turned towards, the Amazon rainforest in the early 2000s, or wetlands in the 2010s, right? Turning our focus to grasslands now, I think, is a really encouraging and exciting thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna wax poetic, but then I realized that was Nicole's topic next.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact numbers. I don't know if you have them by chance, but yeah, the increase in waterfowl has been huge, and it's definitely because they're in the limelight and people care about them. So it's all due to conservation efforts, and it is very nice to see.
Nicole, give us more deep dives into some good news.
Will do. Your topic, Alan, ties in very, very well with mine, which is why I wanted to go after yours, because I want to talk about the North American Grasslands Conservation Act.
Yay!
Yeah.
This was modeled very heavily after the very successful North American Wetlands Conservation Act, which has preserved an estimated 3 million acres of habitat since 1989. So that is a lot of habitat. And yeah, if we can do it for wetlands, we can do it for grasslands. And this act might be how we do it. And I'm very excited. It is a bill that was set forth before the U.S. Senate last year to protect, preserve, and provide research opportunities for grasslands in North America. And I really like how they define a grassland in this bill. This is kind of nerdy, but the term grasslands, and this is a quote directly from the bill, means tall grass, mixed grass, short grass, native prairie, sagebrush, shrub, steppe, savanna grasslands, glades, wet meadows, coastal grasslands, and other related grassland ecosystems. So they're being very broad in what they call a grassland, which is really, really nice. And it's just so good to see that they are caring about those non-traditional, I guess, grasslands.
Yeah.
We always think of the wide open plains, and those are great. It's what we call home. But there's so many other types of grasslands in North America and around the world that need preserving. So I love that.
That feels like our definition of grasslands too. It's just like, if it's a grassland, it's a yeah.
Yes.
They're all grasslands.
Yes, and they're all important. And this act, it's not a terribly long document. If this is something that interests you, I definitely recommend actually reading it. It's written fairly accessibly, which I was a little bit surprised by, honestly. I don't read a lot of bills in my free time, so maybe that's common, but I thought that it was written very well. But I am going to attempt to summarize it quickly. We could probably do a whole episode on this, but I am going to attempt to summarize it. And if you go to actforgrasslands.org, you can keep up to date on everything that's going on with it, learn more about the bill. They also have a very, very nice summary if you don't want to read the whole thing. And they have a 1-page summary, and then they have a 4-page summary. So a good way to learn more about it if you don't want to read the whole thing. But I stole this kind of idea of a 4-pronged approach from their summary that they provided on their website. So the first part of this is establishing a North American grasslands conservation strategy for the protection of grasslands. So sounds fancy, but essentially it's going to be headed by the Director of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they do set forth some very specific goals, what does it mean to make a strategy to preserve grasslands? I like that they have specific goals. And included in there is prioritizing remnant grasslands, so grasslands that have not been plowed, have not been, otherwise disturbed, at least in recent times. Not that they haven't been managed, but at least in recent times have not been disturbed. Conserving grassland birds, identifying best land management practices, and developing a tool for tracking county-level conversion of grassland.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super impressive. It doesn't say how they're going to do that, but that is a goal that they set forth and something that it would be really, really nice to have, because we know that grasslands are disappearing, but we don't know at what rate or like where it's worst and things like that. We have estimates, but it's something that's really hard to track currently. So it'd be nice to have like an official way to do that. Their second of the 4-pronged approach is establishing a flexible grassland conservation grant program to fund projects to restore grasslands, increase carbon sequestration, and improve grassland and rangeland health. And again, they also have restoring watersheds in here. They have a lot of different kind of pieces to this, but it's nice that they are specifically setting aside money that will be publicly available and not just used like internally, but it's a huge pool of money. I believe they don't have like any money right now, but it is something that is required in the bill to be set up within 2 years of it being passed, which is a pretty quick turnaround. And I like that they have a timeline on it, because it's not just like, oh, we'll definitely give out money, probably. Like, they're like, no, this is required and it has to be within 2 years. So I like that. And I like how broad the funding is as well, because like we were talking earlier, all of this is connected, all of it is important. The third part of this is creating, which I think is really cool, creating national and regional grassland conservation councils to recommend and approve grassland conservation projects to be funded under that grant program. So not just a national kind of board, but also regional boards. And on those boards, on those councils, it is required to include diverse voices from conservation organizations, ranchers, native tribes, and state wildlife agencies. So they're really trying hard to make sure that everyone is represented and that there's, a lot of flow of ideas happening.
Yeah, that's going to be really important too when you're identifying like which like areas of land and which projects and which like habitat types are going to be important to conserve or prioritize.
Absolutely. And I think, again, this is a good way of like mobilizing people, and having like a targeted group of people can be really, really powerful as far as like deciding what gets done rather than just, again, instead of it just being a vague, yeah, we'll fund stuff. It's like, no, we have a specific group of people that's going to be looking at things to get funded, which is nice. Especially since I like the regional councils in particular, because since they are covering so many different kinds of grasslands, a prairie doesn't need the same thing as a coastal grassland. So it's important that we have these regional councils that know about the local environment and know how best to help them.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
Do they do that in the Wetland Conservation Act?
I'm not 100% sure. I didn't look into it because there's already a lot to look into the grasslands one. Since it's modeled after it, I'm assuming it does. Alan, do you happen to know?
Not off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've looked at that. So
yeah.
Same.
Yeah. But I'm assuming there's some kind of a council or kind of like a board to make those recommendations. I don't know if there's regional ones, though.
Cool.
And the fourth kind of prong to this approach is establishing research initiatives on native crop systems and regenerative grazing practices. So we kind of know what regenerative grazing practice is, making sure that we're not overgrazing things, we're being responsible with how we manage land. What is a native seed crop system? Basically, this is going to be headed by the Plant Conservation Alliance and the director of the Bureau of Land Management. And they are going to be researching native seeds and how best we can grow them in bulk, store them for a long time, and then use those bulk seeds for restoration efforts.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, because we don't know how long seeds last in storage. We don't know necessarily the best way to do this in bulk. We have a lot of like, does this specific plant need cold stratification to, be able to be planted next year? Things like that are a lot of questions that we have. And I love that they're like putting together a team to research this.
I guess I didn't realize we didn't know that about a lot of native plants.
Some plants need it, not all plants do. And especially since, again, we're covering so many different kinds of grasslands, it's difficult to say the least.
Seed storing and stuff being an issue.
That's
Okay,
cool.
that's really cool.
Good questions to answer,
Yeah. And so this is definitely the most expensive part of the act.
Really?
Yes. As far as funds that are already set aside, there is $1 million going towards each year, going towards native seed crops, and then $10 million going towards regenerative grazing research.
Okay.
The council also has about, I think it was $1 million set aside as a budget each year. And then there were some other smaller amounts that was already set aside funds, like paying U.S. Fish and Wildlife Director, stuff like that. Less exciting stuff. But I really like that ranchers and people that own the land are a big part of this act, and that they're trying really hard to have their voices heard, because so much of grassland is privately owned. Yeah. And so those voices are incredibly important, and we need to have them on board for this to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is for sure key. Because, that's right. The big difference probably between grasslands and a lot of other like old growth forests and things like that, or, rainforests, etc. Like, these are areas that are just weren't protected in the first place, right? They're not federally owned. They're not. So, I think that's really great, because like, especially when you hear that they're, not only focusing on the regenerative grazing and things like that, but also just the grant programs providing the actual, resources to make these things happen. Like, we get contacted by landowners who are interested in this sort of thing, who want to convert portions of their land like back to, like, they're like, I would like this to be a native grassland. Don't necessarily have the resources, the backing, or and there's not always necessarily like just like the support to make that happen. So I think it's very good to legislate that into being.
Absolutely. So what's the status on this act?
Why are you laughing? That's making me nervous. This is good news, Nicole.
No.
Stuck in committee.
It was introduced 7/27/2022. So it's been a while. However, it's not necessarily dead in the water. It has been handed over to the Committee on Environment and Public Works. So they are deliberating on it, seeing if they like it, that kind of thing. If it does get passed by the Senate, it goes to the House of Representatives, and then the president would either approve it or veto it. So now is the perfect time to make sure that it doesn't fall out of the limelight, and that we are contacting our representatives and badgering them as much as we want and are able to, and making sure that they know that this is something that we want. So don't let it die in Congress. It's important.
Yeah. Yell at people. Yell at your Congress people.
Yeah. It's surprisingly easy to get on a Zoom call with them too.
So you could yell at them face to face?
Yeah, office
gently.
Say,
oh, cool.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
What's up?
Nice.
Do this thing for grasslands.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, any questions about the North American Grasslands Conservation Act?
I wonder who's specifically on that committee, so we can specifically yell at them.
Yeah, tell us that, Nicole.
Because they're the ones who would pass it on to the congressional agenda, right?
I don't remember, like, as far as, I don't know who's on that committee, the Committee on Environment and Public Works, but I'm sure that it's easily found online.
Look up the committee on the thing you just said. Say that again.
Committee on Environment and Public Works.
Ooh, yeah. We need to harass these people in a nice way.
In a nice way.
We need to motivate them, not harass them.
Motivation.
Motivate them.
And again, if you want to find out more about this, actforgrasslands.org is that website. It's a really good one.
When we motivate them, can I be the bad cop?
Sure.
Cool. Okay.
That's fine.
Beautiful.
You're very scary. Yeah. Very intimidating.
Oh, gosh. I love it. The second thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say, like, this has not been voted on by either house yet.
It is not. So
Correct.
it's in the committee.
In the House?
In the Senate.
House, in the Senate committee. Okay.
Yeah, it was put forth. I didn't write down their names, but it was put forth by a Senate member and backed by 2 other Senate members, which is, again, I don't know a whole lot about bills, but I was looking through like various bills and like looking at like some of the timelines on some of them, and this is not like super unusual, and it's not super common to have like 2 people backing it. So I mean, it does have a lot of support. It's not.
Well, there's like bipartisan
It's
support for it
bipartisan,
too,
Yes.
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
Because this benefits.
It does.
This
It
is not
benefits
just
everyone.
like it's not just like hippy dippy environmentalism. Like this is like a real benefit for like a lot of
Yes.
constituents and
Absolutely.
a lot of stakeholders rather. Because like I mean, even the CRP thing, like that was introduced by Chuck Grassley, who is not like a liberal politician, you know. So like there are people who are focused on this that are not what you would expect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The next item that I wanted to talk about is an organization, actually. It's called the Great Plains Ecotourism Coalition.
Oh, yeah.
Their website is visittheprairie.com. And I think that this is just another really interesting and unique way at preserving grasslands, and specifically, obviously, the prairie. They are based out of Nebraska, but they have maps on their website that are really cool. They have like a whole ecotourism route that you can go on their website. It has the top 50 ecotourism sites in the Great Plains from Montana to Oklahoma. There's national parks, wildlife refuges, state parks, and like so much more, all laid out on this little map that's interactive. And they even have some suggested routes, like I said, in Nebraska. So very, very fun way of finding grasslands that might be near you to visit.
They also have a killer series of posters.
Yes, they
and,
do.
Like, really excellent t-shirt designs.
Yes.
I really want some.
Yes,
Nice.
they're so good. And they even have they have a newsletter that you can subscribe to, but they have a like at the top of the page when you go to their website, there's a visit tab, and you can like specifically look at like, oh, I want to see butterflies, and you can like look at where people have suggested to go see butterflies or pronghorn or even prairie dogs. And it's just a very, I don't know, a very good way of encouraging people to get out into grasslands and like really experience them for themselves. And I really liked this quote, like what is ecotourism? And they broke it down like this. Ecotourism is travel that deepens one's engagement with nature, conserves the environment, and improves the well-being of local communities. Ecotourism stimulates curiosity about the natural world, builds understanding of natural processes, and helps develop a consciousness of our role as nature's stewards.
Aww.
I think that's just a really great way to break it down.
Yeah.
And by encouraging people to get outside, responsible ecotourism brings people into those grasslands so that they can experience it for themselves, which is the first step in getting people excited about conservation. So I love it.
Yes. Go visit a prairie.
Yes.
Yes.
But yeah. And their posters are real good. Their posters, I meant to look this up and I just remembered that I had not looked it up. The artwork for those posters are actually on display right now in Kansas at some park. Don't remember which one.
Cool.
Useful information. Thank
Yes, you're so welcome. If you look it up, you can find it.
They could also be on display in your own home.
They
They
could.
could. They
Yeah.
could.
Google it.
Google.
All right.
But yeah, the last thing I wanted to share,
Yeah.
is about prairie dogs.
Perfect.
Surprise.
Give
Surprise.
Us the prairie dogs, man.
Good news about prairie dogs is hard to come by, so I just had to report this out.
Okay.
People hate them. I love them, but most people hate them, and so they ain't doing too well. But these guys, the Utah prairie dog, is actually doing pretty well.
Whoa. What?
Yeah.
How well are they doing?
As well as the bluebeard, aka the
I don't. How many were there?
Like 400?
Oh, there's
to
more than
500?
that. Utah prairie dog wins.
Hey.
But yeah, the Utah prairie dog is a federally protected species. They are considered threatened under the Endangered Species Act. And national protection has allowed them to have a really good bounce back. They had a low of about, I think it was 1,000 or so prairie dogs in the 70s. And now they're up to, I believe, over 5,500. So pretty good. They have
5 decades.
I mean, it's still an increase.
That's true.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good vibes.
Oh. That's like 1,000 per decade.
Hey, they're critically, like, when you have an endangered species. Okay.
It's hard. Their populations
When
are.
they're at the threshold of extinction, it takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh my God. Fine.
We were excited about 500 macaws.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm just feeling a little bit defensive because you made it a competition.
Well, they're still winning, so.
Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
I guess if you're going by like the increase, the macaws have them beat. But overall numbers, prairie dogs are winning. So, just saying.
There you go.
Yeah. The Utah Wildlife Board has conducted reviews of the Utah prairie dog and has approved changes to their management once they are delisted. They are very confident that they will be delisted under the Endangered Species Act. And that while that sounds kind of scary at first, it's not, because just because Utah is calling for the delisting of this species doesn't mean all their protection is going away. They're just asking that the protection of this species basically become Utah's problem, and they will still be doing a lot of different things to make sure that they're doing well and that they continue doing well.
Well, if you approve of the delisting, it makes me feel like it's not, politics. And there's a conservation side that makes sense here. So.
Yes. I always worry about that. I looked into it, and I did find the Utah Prairie Dog Conservation Strategy put forth by the Utah Division of Wildlife. It is a 74-page document. I did not read it all, but I did skim it. And they have a lot of things. It talked about historically how they've done, but also the strategy moving forward of how they're going to protect them. And some of those things that they'll be doing is continuing to monitor populations. So currently, every spring they go out and count all the prairie dogs that they can find, and they do monitor population by population. So they have like an overall number, but they also have numbers for each like group of prairie dogs out there. And they'll also be continuing research on plague control methods, because prairie dogs are very highly susceptible to plague and do die. They're not a carrier of plague. They just straight up die. It's really, really bad for them. And then I also learned that the sylvatic plague is invasive, and that's why so many of our small mammals do so poorly with it. I guess it makes sense, but
But it's not.
I'd never thought about it. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. And I was like, huh. So that's why 95% of prairie dogs that get plague die.
They did not evolve alongside it
Yeah.
in order to combat it.
Yes.
What about bubonic plague, though? That's also not from here, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's European.
Yeah.
Classically European.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Classically.
Yeah.
Those Europeans and their plagues.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Europeans and their plagues.
Oh, gosh. They also have done a lot of transportation of prairie dogs, like away from private property or away from property that's going to be developed and onto, either a different piece of private property that's okay with having them around or protected land. So they're going to continue doing that. And they also require surveys of areas before development of that land so that they can't move those prairie dogs away. So it's not just, they're not just relying on people to report, hey, there's prairie dogs here. Like they actually do surveys and look for the prairie dogs.
For prairie dogs, honestly, relocating them somewhere else is very good.
Yes.
That's a shocking amount of care for this particular group of animals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they do really well. Like reintroduction efforts and moving them around the state has been very, very successful, which is not always the case with reintroduction efforts. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
No.
I loved them. But to kind of wrap us up, in 2018, there was a beginning of a 5-year status review of the Utah prairie dog by Fish and Wildlife Service. And in 2021, it was actually determined that due to plague and some human concerns, that they should still be listed. So there is another 5-year review coming up this year. So my fingers are crossed, at least, that they will be delisted because of all these efforts that we've done towards helping them. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, prairie dogs.
Good job, prairie dogs.
What a win.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Definitely.
Oh, I mean, yeah. It's
They've
already a
definitely
win, I
increased
guess.
a lot. They're doing surprisingly well, and there's a lot of really passionate people that care about them, which again is kind of rare for prairie dogs.
Yeah.
So it makes me really happy.
Being reminded that they are constantly suffering under the thumb of plague also reminds me that, increasing from 1,000 to 5,000 is pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you had plague constantly, it'd be hard for you to exist. Yep.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yes.
What?
Yeah, suffering under a plague is something we can all relate to.
Yeah.
Cut that out.
Good vibes. All
Good
right.
vibes.
Well, I hope you, our treasured listener, feel a little better about things now. It's not all bad.
Yeah.
A lot of things are okay. And you'll be okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If prairie dogs can make it, I bet you can.
Yeah.
You don't even have plague.
You don't even have plague.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, guys.
That's
All
not really
right.
how we end this.
No.
Thanks for listening to The Best Biome, a podcast produced by Grassland Groupies. That's us. Follow us on places. You can find all the links in our description. And we'll put links to all of this stuff in the description in our notes. I'll start with theirs and then list all of my 10,000 ones after that, so that you can find them.
Amazing. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.